The Truth Girls.
Hi everyone. Well, about the epidemic of microcephaly in Brazil, which is being blamed on the Zika virus, a lot of people are wanting to know what's really going on. Is it really Zika virus causing it, or is it something else? Could be GM mosquitoes, could be glyphosate, aka Roundup, or it could be a type of new DTaP vaccine. So Dr. Rima says that the mosquito story is probably nothing more than a, quote, deceitful cover story to hide the fact that a new DTaP vaccine, which women in Latin America are urged to get before they're 22 weeks pregnant, is the real cause of this horrible deformity. As microcephalic children, are these children vaccine injured like the Brazilian babies? Okay, I happen to know who these two children here are. These are Lola and Claire Hartley. They have microcephaly and also dwarfism and a number of other problems. There are genetic conditions that can cause microcephaly, and in combination with dwarfism, when you have two in the same family, there's a good chance that it's genetic. DTaP vaccinations for all pregnant women in Brazil mandated in late 2014. They're recommended to get it from the 27th to 36th week of pregnancy, not before the 22nd week. Professor Vranjak was recommending that they vaccinate pregnant women with the DTaP vaccines, such as GlaxoSmithKline's Boostrix. Okay, Boostrix has been around for a long time. In 2011, the CDC instituted a similar universal use DTaP vaccine policy for all pregnant women in the US in an attempt to control pertussis infections. So, they also vaccinate them in the US now, and you don't have an epidemic of microcephaly in the US. Here's an article from 2011 where Brazil was launching the Adacel Quadra vaccine to avoid teens and adults transmitting whooping cough to babies. The vaccine was new, Adacel Quadra. Here's the leaflet, product information from 2009, but this is by Sanofi Pasteur. So did they in the end go with the GSK vaccine Boostrix, and does it make any difference? I'm not really sure. These are all basically the same thing, like Adacel and Boostrix. It's a DTaP booster, and Quadra because it also contains IPV. FDA announces approval of Quadracel DTaP IPV vaccine for children 4 to 6. Well, Quadracel is basically Adacel Quadra. It's maybe it's just a different name. So now they say, okay, instead of your DTaP booster, you're going to have a DTaP plus IPV. What does this have to do with Brazil? I don't think that it has much to do with it. I'm no big fan of vaccines. Definitely, I think that taking vaccines when you're pregnant is a big gamble. I wouldn't do it, personally. But is this causing the outbreak of microcephaly? I mean, is there any proof? This is what I'm looking for. I don't think so, unless they got a really bad batch. And here's the other reason I don't think so. If you look at this article, a couple things here. Number one, they say that the cases are going down. 5 new cases diagnosed in the capital of Recife compared to 18 at the peak of the crisis in late November 2015. Okay, so if it had to do with pregnant women getting vaccines, why are the cases going down? Because they're still getting vaccinated, so that doesn't make any sense. You'd think it would be going up, as more women get vaccinated, you'd be getting more cases. So that makes no sense. And the other thing was that the cases were happening in mostly, like the epidemic of microcephaly was in the area where they had a lot of Zika virus. And the doctors there seem to think that there was really a clear connection. Now, if you're thinking conspiracy, I'll tell you, though, what the one thing is that is not getting enough attention, that I think this is the real problem, that the women who are getting sick while they're pregnant, it's because they're exposed to a lot of mosquitoes, and the reason for this probably has to do with the fact that they're really poor, and there's poor sanitation. And I think that that probably has a lot to do with it. That in Brazil you have the very, very rich and you have the very, very poor, and in a lot of places you have people living in sort of slums, shanty towns. And that's the real issue. Why is there such a big disparity between the rich and poor? And why are they bringing vaccines to the third world? And like, oh, what are we going to do to get rid of the mosquitoes, GM mosquitoes or vaccines? when maybe what they should be doing would be helping with sanitation or infrastructure, for those poor areas. Maybe they should be putting money into giving those people clean, safe places to live, clean water. Maybe I'm a dreamer and it's really not that easy, but I think that they put a lot of money into pharmaceuticals and not nearly so much into getting at the root of why this place is so full of mosquitoes and why things are not clean, I think that probably is a big issue that nobody is talking about. Oh yeah, and the other two things, while I'm on the subject, GM mosquitoes, well, they're engineered to be sterile. Probably they had a higher failure rate than expected because of presence of tetracycline in wastewater and things like that. It's possible. What the mosquitoes are particularly susceptible to Zika and to passing it on, I don't know. But there's no proof that it's the mosquitoes causing the Zika. It's like they actually brought the mosquitoes in because they had too many mosquitoes. They brought the GM mosquitoes in because they already had a big mosquito problem. No, I don't see any proof there at this point. Oh, and about glyphosate Roundup, well, you know how I feel about GMOs, but could it be causing microcephaly? Well, apparently it can cause microcephaly in chicken embryos. But, when they do studies in the lab, they're usually using pretty high concentrations of something. So, considering that Roundup is used all over the US, it's used all over North America, we're exposed to it, our kids are exposed to it, the chickens are certainly exposed to it. And you don't have an epidemic of microcephaly in chickens in the US. You'd think you would, because they're eating GMO corn, or they're living on farms near Roundup, in agricultural areas. But you don't see a lot of chickens with microcephaly. So depopulation, conspiracy, because they're telling them not to have children. The thing with telling them not to have children, it's impossible to enforce because they don't really even have access to birth control. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So at this point, I think it's a poverty problem and a sanitation problem. Well, let me know what you think, and thanks for giving me a thumbs up. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.